Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to World of Tanks Update 2.0. And with a big update like this, there's a question going around, especially from players who are jumping ship from console over to PC. What tank should I grind? Well, there's a lot of them you should be grinding. Plenty of them. In fact, if you want a tier 11, you've got, what, 16 of them to choose from? You've got a good number of tanks to grind. But today we're going to be counting down what I believe to be the 7 best tanks to grind right now because of their characteristics at tier 10, because they lead to tier 11. Actually, one of them in this list does not even lead to tier 11, but I decided to include it anyway. But starting things off is the world famous mouse, which leads to tier 11 Taschenratte, or the pocket goat, which is a little bit easier to say if you're not German. But the mouse tier 10 is a super heavy with absurd amounts of health and absurd amounts of armor. The armor is defeatable, but if you are a good player and you know how to angle this tank, if you know how to angle side scrape, turn your turret, that kind of a jazz thing, you can block more damage in this tank than basically any other tank you're going to play. It's absolutely absurd what you can do, and it impacts the game greatly because of your health. Like, just playing the mouse gives your team an advantage because of your hit point pool, so long as you use it, and your armor. More often than not, you're blocking about 2 to 3 grand if you do nothing with the tank. And plus the 3,000 hit points, meaning the enemy has to shoot through 5,000 to 6,000 health just to kill you. And that's if you're not playing well. If you're playing well, then they have to shoot through sometimes up to 10,000 damage worth of health. And so you're already winning games, not even shooting your gun. That's the mouse. And the line leading up is also fairly, well, it plays very similarly. You've got the Motion at tier 9, and then the VK 1001 at tier 8, both of which play a lot like the mouse. And so you learn on your way up how to play the mouse. Then, of course, you get to the tier 11, and everybody wants a new tier 11. In fact, I think a lot of people want the mouse tier 11. The pocket goat is what it's called. And so for that reason, I have included the mouse on this list, and I think everyone just needs a mouse in World of Tanks. If you don't have a mouse, you should get a mouse. You should begin grinding a mouse. It's one of the most famous tanks in World of Tanks. It's kind of infamous, like the KV-2 or the Death Star. The mouse is up there in that list. So what are you waiting for if you don't have one already? Go get yourself a mouse. Up next, we have the T110E5, American tier 10 heavy tank. This entire line is pretty good. It's one of the best lines to learn how to play the game. And so, again, if you're switching over from Blitz, you're switching over from console, you haven't played World of Tanks PC in a while, you haven't played it much at all, this line is an incredible line to start with because you have things like the T29 at tier 7, which will teach you how to go hull down and how to really dominate when you're top tier, the T32, which plays exactly the same, but it's a tier higher, the M103 that now starts to play a bit more like the E5, and then finally at tier 10, you have the T110E5. But you're not done at tier 10 anymore, because it leads on to the T803 at tier 11. But what makes the T110E5 so special is basically its ability to brawl. It's got an incredible upper plate at 254 millimeters of upper plate armor, angled at such a weird angle, and your lower plate is thick as well and awkward. You've got a rounded hull, you've got V-shaped side armor, you've got a strong turret, you've got good gun handling, you've got good DPM. The tank can do it all. The mobility is even not that bad. You just have a cupola on top, but even the cupola can block some shots, especially from tier 8s, especially from standard rounds, especially if you're using your gun depression, you're wiggling, you're sticking your gun up. There's all these different tricks you can do with the E5, and if you don't want to do any of them, you just play aggressive, you push into the enemy, and you're going to have a pretty good game because the tank is forgiving. And that, of course, is real nice to have a forgiving tank. And that's the T110E5, probably one of the more forgiving tanks in the game that will reward you for potentially not playing ideally. The E100 and the mouse are very good at saving you if you play poorly, but they don't exactly dish out the damage, and they get caught out a lot because they're slower. And frankly, when people load premium rounds, they go right through. The E5 kind of avoids that. The lower plate is easier to penetrate when they load their premium rounds, but your turret is still just as strong. Your cupola is still angled strangely and premium rounds will still bounce off, and you know what? They'll even bounce off your lower plate still because of your weird angling if they're shooting premium rounds. That's the T110E5. It is easier to pen with premium, but it's not just a dead tank when you load premium. Think of the FE2 and 5B if you've ever played that heavy tank. As soon as gold rounds are loaded, you're dead. You're already mostly dead in that tank. But with the gold rounds, now you're ultra mega giga dead. T110E5. The Grille 15, which leads to the Hirschkäfer. Sorry, I butchered that. Or the Stag Beetle at tier 11. And the reason I think the Grille 15 should be ground for in World of Tanks these days, if you haven't already, or if you're starting from scratch, jumping over from console, whatever you're doing, is because the line, just like the T110E5, is very forgiving and plays a lot like the tier 10. You've got people don't like the Stura Mill, but I personally love it. A huge 490 alpha gun at tier 7, very good concealment despite it being big. Throw on, well, it's because it's a tank destroyer, and so your camo net does more and your camouflage skill does more on tank destroyers if you didn't know that. And so you've got more camouflage already just because you're a tank destroyer. Throw those on, find a bush, kaboom, you're nuking people, sometimes tier 5s, for 490 damage. That's on average. Sometimes you roll even higher than that, of course, or lower still. Then you have the Borsig at tier 8, one of the sneakiest tanks in the game, one of my favorite tanks to learn how to use bush mechanics. Then you have the Waffenträger, Panzer 4. I'm obviously butchering that one as well. But who cares? I'm giving it a go. I'm from America. I do what I want. And that one is arguably a tier 10 tank. I love the gun, and I wish we had a Guerrilla 15 version with the 128 that the Waffenträger Panzer 4 has. Then you have the Grille 15, the most accurate tank destroyer that doesn't have a siege mode in the game. And yes, it is accurate. Now, if you're coming from console, no, you don't have a fully traversable turret like you do on console in the Grille 15. I think it would do great with that here on PC, but hey, you know what? Beggars can't be choosers, and so we'll take what we can get. But again, most accurate gun in the game that does not have a siege mode or some other kind of special mechanic. It is just straight out of the box accurate. Very cool. And then of course you do lead to a tier 10, which a lot of players, sorry, tier 11, a lot of players aren't exactly thrilled about because they say it's a downgrade, you have less alpha. But I'm looking at it and I'm seeing Waffle Panzer 4, which again is what I love. I love the Waffle Panzer 4. Now you've given it to me at this higher tier with higher penetration and accuracy and more hit points and more camouflage. Yes, please. But that is my opinion, and this whole list is my opinion, and so I believe the Grille is a fantastic tank to grind right now. One of my favorites, and that is why I chose it as my free line when I logged in the other day, is because of like, I want those tanks. I want to play the Rheinmetall Borsig. I want to play the Waffle Panzer 4, I want to play the Grille 15, and eventually get the tier 11. So I've added this one to the list. Here's an interesting one that used to be golden. Not necessarily in the color of its metal, or the make of its metal, but the fact that it was S-tiered back when the game was in beta and they were testing tier 10s, and then when the game was released, the tank was nerfed, and we're talking about the M48 Patton, the M48 A5 Patton. Voice crack, who cares? The thing about the Patton is it used to have this very, very snappy gun, and it was unbelievable in classic World of Tanks, just how snappy this gun was back actually in beta, even before classic World of Tanks. And you didn't have equipment yet, you didn't have crew skills yet. And so this tank just blew things out of the water. Then, on release, they decided to nerf it, and they nerfed it hard. It was still good because gun handling was far and few between way back in the day, and so it was nice to have a tank that could hit some shots on the move. But then, as the game evolved, the crew skills came out, equipment came out, more gun handling came out, the tank fell behind because it's slow, because it had a weak turret, because it had a huge cupola. And so they buffed the gun handling on it, and they buffed the turret armor. Then years went by and it was still underperforming, so they chopped the cupola in half. Now it's shorter than it's ever been, and they buffed the gun handling again. But it still falls behind because of the speed, and so they have buffed it yet again with this update, which leads to the Hacker at tier 11, but here at tier 10, the Patton has received better gun handling and better traverse speeds. It snaps better than it ever has before, other than maybe Beta. But we'll never know, because Beta, again, didn't have crew skills and equipment and all that. But with crew skills and equipment, I have a feeling this tank snaps better than it ever has before. You are going to be hitting shots on the move, and that makes up for the fact that you only go 45 kilometers an hour base. Of course, you can put some equipment on here, make yourself go 50, maybe go 53 if you want to. I'll add some things to make your tank go a bit faster if you want to. But if we're just talking about the base tank, you're snapping more than ever before, and that allows you to be more effective, well, have a higher effective speed. What do you mean by that? If I'm going 70 in my Leopard and I'm only going 45 in my Patton, how is it that I have a quicker or higher effective speed? Well, here's why. It is because you're able to hit shots while you advance, and so as you're advancing, you're putting damage in, and so you're going to be able to clear that flank a little bit quicker, deal with them better. Meanwhile, when you're pushing with a Leopard and you're missing your shots on the move, you're getting there, sure, faster, but you have to now deal with full health tanks, or healthier tanks than you would if you were in a Patton, because your Patton's going to hit 2 shots on the way there, if that makes sense. All these little things. And that might be semantics to you guys, like, oh, that's such a little thing. But believe me, when you're a Unicum and you're a good player, the Patton cooks. It is such a good tank. And the line leading up to it is incredible. M4 at tier 5, Easy 8 at tier 8, T20 at tier 7. Then you have the Pershing at tier 6. Then you have the M48 Patton at tier 9, which is absolutely incredible. Then you have the M48 Patton, and just going up that line is a dream. And just like the E5 line, you are going to be learning how to use 10 degrees of gun depression, 9 degrees of gun depression. You're going to be learning how to use your slower mobility but your solid gun. And it's just, you're going to learn the playstyle. And then you get to tier 11 and you have yourself a Hacker, which again plays very similarly to these ones, but it's a little bit faster still. So that is why I've included this tank on the list. I think it's a beautiful tank. Again, it's hitting shots on the move. You don't need to stop, and if you do, you only have to stop for a moment, because your gun is going to snap in, and bada bing, bada boom, you hit your shots. I was not originally going to incorporate any tanks in this list that do not have a tier 11 that follows after, but after seeing the buffs to this tank, I had to list it. And that's the Type 5 Heavy. In case you're wondering, the hull armor and turret face, the hull armor is being buffed all over the front, other than the weak spots, the machine gun port and the driver's hatch on the front, which is good, or the driver viewport is actually what it is. Those are getting changed, buffed from 270 millimeters up to 310. So now you can angle your tank and have like 340 effective millimeters of frontal plate armor. Finally, you are resistant to heavy tanks if you angle properly. It's no longer just, okay, they look gold, they pen you. But they kept the weak spots the same. Your cupola is only 200 millimeters, which is fair, and your driver's hatch and your machine gun are both 260 millimeters. So this tank is still penable with standard from some tier 10s and premium from some tier 8s. And so it's still killable if you aim for weak spots, and that's how the game is supposed to be. But what else did they do to this tank to make it better? Well, they've also made it so the AP round on here has 700 alpha instead of the 600 that you're seeing. Right now, you're watching the Type 5 play in the background pre-buff. It's only got 270 millimeters of frontal plate armor and 600 alpha on its AP round. This tank is better than it's ever been. And just like the previous tanks, you're going to notice a trend in my lists. This line all plays the same, and so you're learning how to play the tier 10 as you go. You don't have to just jump ship like you would, and let's say how the Death Star used to be. When you had the FV-215B-183, you ground up the AT line all the way to the Tortoise, and then suddenly you get this Death Star at tier 10 that plays completely different. And the same can be said about the British heavy tank line. You've got these Churchills, and then it's not till you get to tier 8 that the tank starts playing similarly. Now that's not as drastic because at least you have the 8 and 9 to teach you how to play the Super Conqueror. But for this line, you're starting at tier 5 with this super heavy idea. The armor at tier 5 doesn't work as well, but then once you get to tier 6, now you're feeling it. 150 millimeters of frontal plate armor at tier 6. Many tier 6s don't have that pen. Some don't even have it on their premium round, and so you're just impervious from the front, though you do have weak spots that they have to aim for. But that's the trend throughout this line. You have obscene amounts of armor, but you also have weak spots, and that's how the game should be. None of this, you know, hatchless tanks. This one has hatches, and I really respect it because this tank has come a long way, because it used to not really have that, and it used to have the derp gun that just auto-did damage, but then with the HE changes, the tank has been toned down while still retaining its awesomeness. It's no longer an auto-win tank, an auto-damage tank. It now requires some semblance of idea in order to do things with. And so I've included it in the list, and I think the Type 5 is in a fantastic spot. It might be a bit painful to grind because of the speed if you don't like slow tanks. But if you're willing to look past the slowness, the Type 5 does wonders. So if you're willing, go ahead and pick yourself up a Type 5 Heavy. One of the most terrifying tanks to ever crest a ridge line is the Canopener. British Tier 10 heavy tank. Oh my goodness. People think this tank is toxic because of the armor, and I think I might agree. The armor on this tank is absolutely absurd. You have gun depression, you have a very tiny cupola, you have very tiny driver's hatch, which is still thick, very tiny lower plate. Your upper plate is basically impervious. And then you're allowed to sit in places like this when there is no artillery, and you cannot be stopped. And just like the other tanks in this list, the line teaches you how to play it. Starting at Tier 7, you basically have a mini version of the Canopener. Tier 8, mini version of the Canopener. Tier 9, mini version of the Canopener. And so then the question is, what about the Tier 11? Because it does lead to Tier 11, called the Contriver double-barreled British heavy tank. But these heavy tanks perform differently or act differently than the normal double barrels, and that's you can only fire one gun at a time, and both guns have to be loaded. Okay, so both guns have to be loaded before you can fire again, so they don't fire independently of each other per se. Then you can activate your double shot mechanic, which drastically destroys your gun handling, but you shoot them off at the same time without need to wait. You don't need to wait for a charge up. You can just go in and blast as soon as you pull the trigger, and it's very cool. Then both shells go out, you have to wait a little bit, then you start reloading again. That's what this tank does. That's its mechanic, and it's pretty cool. I think it's a balanced mechanic, but then again, you have the armor to deal with. Very hard to kill, and that's why everybody's playing these, and you don't see people in the Super Conquerors anymore. Because why would you, when you've got yourself a Canopener? And there's a reason I didn't include the Super Conqueror in here, despite it being a solid tank, and that's because you have the E5. That's because you have this Canopener. Why get the Super Conqueror? Especially since there's no tank after the Super Conqueror. The Super Conqueror is going to fall so far out of its golden days, because that tank used to be considered the best heavy tank in the game alongside the WZ-111-5A. But now, I mean, who cares? People know you can just load premium rounds and shoot through the turret. But here comes the Grille 15. Will he shoot? He does. Upper plate, bounces off, looking down. And it's just what this tank does. You don't need a Super Conqueror. And now ready, he's going to double tap this guy. So you can see what it does. Kaboom! 605 out of the game. Switches back to his single shots. And now he has to wait for the bolt to reload. But it allowed him to execute and move on. Absolutely crazy what this tank can do. Very good tank. And if you haven't ground it yet, which many of you have not because it's newer in PC, then go get it. Go grind it. Have some fun. You're going to enjoy it. I guarantee you that. Last, and certainly not least, a tank that was always going to make this list. In fact, could make this list in its sleep with its treads tied on its engine deck. The IS-7. You can never go wrong in an IS-7. Joseph Stalin 7. It's insane. You've got 2,400 hit points now these days. It used to have less. It used to have 2,150. It also used to have a weak engine of 1,000 horsepower. it got buffed to 1200, and the health got buffed to 2400, and the gun handling used to be so derpy, but they buffed the gun handling. The premium round used to be only 300, and I'm thinking 303 or 301. It's one of those numbers. Millimeters of penetration, now it's 310. The tank had its issues, but it was still good, and it still had a high top speed of, you're gonna laugh at this number, 59.6 kilometers an hour. It rounds up to 60, so you might see 60 in your garage, but it is 59.6. But it didn't quite get there because of the terrain resistances and the engine. Both of those being buffed, now it gets close to that, and it's heavy. It's a heavy tank. I'm not saying classification. It is a heavy tank classification, but it's a heavy tank. It's steel, man, and it's like a missile. You can ram things really hard with it. And so a lot of YouTubers and other players love to set this thing up with all the speed equipment they possibly can. They don't care about their gun handling. They don't care about their DPM. They don't care about their view range. All they want is that speed and that ramming capability, and they're able to truck things for thousands of damage. Hundreds, sometimes thousands. I said thousands first, so there goes the marvel. But that's what you can do in this tank. And if you want to brawl in it, you still can. Gun rammer, vertical stabilizer, hardening. Maybe you do throw speed on there instead of gun rammer, whatever you want to do. And it's really good at brawling. You have a angled pike nose, which is absolutely crazy. It's very good when you can hide that lower plate. And a turret that is one of the greatest turrets in the game. It is defeatable. People have been learning how to. But it's still very hard. And you can block Jagdpanzer E-100s firing heat shells at your turret, which not many tanks can do. But this tank can. It's nuts. And then, on top of that, it leads to the tier 11 KR1, where they just said, oh, you guys like ramming in your IS-7? Well, guess what? This tank now does bonus ram damage, and it takes less damage from rams, too. You can ram a mouse. It's still not a great idea, but you can. You can actually do damage to a mouse, a Type 5 Heavy, if you ram with those things. And so if you like that, then go for the IS-7. And again, it's one of those tanks that's very famous in this game. And if you don't have one, you gotta get one. Or if you're starting from scratch, you're coming here from Blitz, coming here from console, or you just heard about 2.0 and you want to try it out, or maybe you've just never ground for the IS-7, which is crazy to me, go get it. And the line is amazing. KV-1, the best tank in the game to learn how to play is the KV-1. You learn how to angle, you learn about your armor, which is what I was just saying. You learn about, your gun mechanics. The gun is good enough to pen many targets, very good to pen weak spots, so you learn that kind of stuff. You can side scrape in it. It's a very good tank. The KV-1S, not so much. Then you have the IS, which is great. You have the IS-3, which is legendary. Then you have the Object 257, which is pretty decent. It's not a T10. I prefer the T10. And then you have the IS-7. And then, plus that line branches off to many others. That line branches, and you can also get yourself the 277. Yeah, you can do that. Then the IS branches to the IS-22. So you can get the ST-22. It does not dance. Okay, it's very manly tutu. It's a great line to grind. Probably the best one, and why I have chosen this as my second line for free on my alternate account. Because the IS-7 is amazing, and I've been having fun with the IS-7. I've been having fun with the IS. And soon the IS-3, I can't wait to pull that one out. It's a good line. And I'll be able to grind for other tier 10s with it. And then, of course, top of the cake, you also get yourself a tier 11. One that's made specifically for ramming. And it still has the pike nose, and it still has an incredible gun. And it still has incredible armor. Probably one of the best tier 11s, if not the best tier 11 to be introduced, because they just took what was good about the tier 10 and made it better. It's slightly slower, slightly. It seems that way, but as you upgrade it, it gets to be about on par with the IS-7. But that is my video. I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you did, slap that like button, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the PC gameplay if you're from console. And if you're not from console and you're from PC, welcome to the channel. We do, at the moment, mostly console, but we are transitioning to PC. Though we will still have console on the channel for the console people. But that's it, and I will be seeing you guys all later. If you want to support the channel financially, you don't have to, of course, there is a link to a GoFundMe if you want to take part in that. Otherwise, this video is over, and I'll be seeing you all later. Take care, everyone, and peace out.